There's always a moment when we start these live streams, whether it's a post-game show or it's the 8:30 Wednesday night live stream. There's always a moment where I'm just about to click that button. Just about to click, what is the button? Start stream or something like that on YouTube. And I'm just about to click that button. And there's a voice inside your head that says, you don't have to. You can just skip it. You get up, walk away, and tell people you just didn't feel like doing it. You know, this isn't part of the Panther-Lair.com subscription. You know, this is not a subscriber exclusive. This is sort of something I do on the side, obviously, to promote Panther-Lair.com. There's no question about that. But this is just sort of a side thing that I do. I enjoy it. It's fun to kind of get together and have these conversations. But there's always sort of there's that little voice that says, you don't have to do it. You could just walk away. You could go make dinner, go outside. It's almost 50 degrees out. Looks pretty sunny out from what I can see. You don't have to do the live stream. And then I click the button and we do the live stream. Even in the aftermath of a 30-point loss. Excuse me, a 27-point loss. We still do the live stream. And like, look, I don't know. I mean, I guess if you're gonna lose in spectacular fashion. You know, if you're gonna lose, you might as well go out in a blaze of glory. I don't know if it necessarily helps or hurts your NCAA tournament chances, but boy howdy, did Pitt get blown out today. And I mean, you talk about a game that was just over before it started. You know, when you're down 12-0 in the first, 3 minutes and 15 seconds, you're in a bad shape. You know, you're going to run into trouble when that eventually pushes out to 20-6 or 16-4 or, 16-6. And then it's 28-13 and it's 50-32. Look, the problem here, Pitt's biggest problem in this game, where this game really got away from Pitt, is when Duke went on a 96-69 run. I mean, that was where it really got out of hand. If you get outscored by 27 over, in a stretch of a game, I mean, it's just hard to come back from that. And that's, I mean, I don't even know what you pinpoint here. I mean, the defense was crap. The offense, they ended up shooting 42% from the field, but most of that was inside the arc. They only made 5 3-pointers. They got out-rebounded, but only by 5. They only committed 10 turnovers, which isn't really that many. Now, Duke scored 17 points off of those 10 turnovers. But I don't know what you really pinpoint here. Everything about this game was just about the worst it had been all season. I mean, this was probably not even up for debate as the worst Pitt game of the season. I mean, this was miserable from the very start. And it was only made more miserable by listening to the ESPN announcers or ESPN2, whatever channel this was on, talk about, these scrappy upstart Duke kids who are battling back after being disrespected and playing with a chip on their shoulder. How the hell do you sell those guys on having a chip on their shoulder? If you're John Shire, how do you sell that to anyone that you have a chip on your shoulder? And then how do you sell it to those guys that they have a chip on your shoulder? How do you convince Mark Mitchell, Derek Lively, Dariq Whitehead, and Kyle Filipowski that they should have a chip on their shoulder? They're 5-star recruits, and they're freshmen, playing as freshmen. Tyrese Proctor is like the black sheep of the group there. He was only a 4-star. What a bum. What a guy who's really outplayed his ranking there. I mean, like, give me a break with this chip on your shoulder stuff. It took them a while to come together, and they lost 8 games, and they had, they were questionable at the beginning of the season because they hadn't come together, because this is what happens when you have a team that's built like that, full of 5-star freshman studs. It takes a little while for the team to gel. But right now, I mean, not to overreact to one game, but I mean, they look like a Final Four team. Not just because they beat Pitt by almost 30, but they've now won 7 games in a row. They finished the regular season on a 6-game winning streak. They look like they should be the favorite to win the ACC tournament, and they should enter, as a relatively high seed in the NCAA tournament. This is a team that has come together around its talent, which is considerable. It's a very, very good team. And I even made the joke on Twitter when you went into halftime of, somebody told me about Jeff Capel is still an awful coach. I said, well, hopefully Capel makes the adjustment at halftime, the adjustments that make Duke shorter and less good, because their height, their length and their sheer talent made this a very difficult matchup for Pitt. Now, I don't know if they're going to get blown out by 30 every time they play Duke. If they were to play Duke, 10 times, I don't know if every game would be a 30-point blowout. But the reality is this was just a continuation of the second half of the last game against Duke. Pitt had a good half against Duke. They played a good first half in that regular season game. And they got blown out in the second half, and they got blown out today. So it's 3 straight halves of just getting blown out by this team that is a terrible matchup for them. And a big part of the problem is the size. I mean, Duke has Filipowski guarding out on the perimeter, Mitchell guarding out on the perimeter. When you've got that, it gets real. And those are the guys who are guarding out to the wings. Imagine the size they still have inside on the post. It makes life very difficult for the guys down there. I mean, let me bring up this stat because it happened several times. Where is it? I can't find it. Of shots that were blocked, Duke blocked 3 shots, but I feel like several of those were on Pitt's biggest guys. I mean, I think, Guillermo Diaz-Graham had a shot blocked, and this is one of the tallest guys on Pitt's roster, and they end up, having shots blocked. I mean, it's just really hard to play against that size, and they showed a few of the clips from the game against Georgia Tech, showed Jamarius Burton driving in and pulling up for the floaters and hitting the step-back jump shots and things like that, things that he's done well all season. And he can do those well all season, and whoever Pitt plays next, in whatever tournament they're in next, he'll probably hit more of those shots because those are his bread and butter, and he's really good at it. But not when he's facing guys that are 6'10", who can guard him and stay in front of him and have that size. He can't pull up like that. I mean, you look at what Jamarius Burton, he still ended up with, 13 points, but he was 5 of 12 from the field. And he scored 10 points on field goals. I mean, it was hard for him to get those shots off. Pitt's 3-point shooting, 5 of 18 from 3. 3 of those were Nike Savandi. Blake Hinson goes 1 of 4. Greg Elliott only tried 1 shot from outside. He had 3 shots from inside. If you want to know how tough it was to shoot against this Duke team, particularly on the perimeter, Greg Elliott took 4 field goal attempts and only 1 of them was from 3-point land. It's a terrible matchup for Pitt, and I think if this team is rolling, if this Duke team is rolling, it's a terrible matchup for a lot of teams. It's a really tough team to beat, unless you can match that size. And I'm not sure who can. I don't know who can really match that size and talent with the way they've come together. Filipowski is a handful. What did he end up with in this game today? He scored 22 points, and he only played 15 minutes. Because he had the ankle injury. When he got hurt with the ankle problem, he thought, well, maybe there's a chance. He got hurt 2 minutes into the game. He knocked down a couple threes right off the bat. You thought, well, maybe there's a chance. But by the time he came back in, Duke was up by 10. It was 16-6. And it wasn't, it didn't even feel that close. It was a blowout loss in a terrible matchup. And it was a terrible match. Sometimes you get in these games where they're bad matchups and you don't necessarily get blown out like this. But sometimes the bad matchup plays out exactly sort of to definition. You know what I mean? Like the bad matchup plays out exactly as the matchup should. And the matchup here was terrible for Pitt. And then you add in losing composure, guys, I think kind of probably hanging their heads after the way the game opened. They battled back a little bit, if you can call being down 16 at the half battling back, and then they give up a 12-0 run. Was it? A 12-0 run to open the second half too. Just complete. I think in addition to the matchup issue, this team didn't put its best foot forward in this game. And who gets some of the blame there? I mean, obviously, a lot of it's going to fall on the head coach, and I'm sure as I check back into the chat screen, I'm sure we've got a lot of people saying this. A lot of it will fall on the head coach, but I mean, Blake Hinson has to be called out here a little bit. Blake Hinson played 19 minutes in this game. The first time all season he's played less than 25 in a game. He took a flagrant foul in the first half. It was his second foul. He ended up getting pulled for that. And then in the second half, Hinson only played 7 minutes. In the second half. This is a game where Pitt was trailing by 20 plus and 30 plus. And Blake Hinson, one of the 3-point shooters, the team's leading scorer, played 7 minutes in the second half. And it wasn't a problem of fouls. He didn't commit any fouls. He only had 2 fouls. But he was, I think, focus, composure, He didn't play. Federico played 4 minutes in the second half. He didn't have any fouls either. He wasn't in foul trouble. Nate Santos finally sees playing time for the first time in a long time. Guillermo and Jorge played 16 minutes each. I thought there was an interesting comment during the broadcast. They said Jeff Capel's going with the guys who want to play, want to work. And I thought that was an interesting comment. I wondered if they had seen something on the Pitt bench, but I think who they had in at that point, it was Jamarius Burton, it was Nike Subandi, and it was the Twins, and maybe Cummings was in at that point, maybe Nate Santos. They kind of rotated around, but even then, Burton ended up playing 12 minutes. Cummings played 13 minutes. It was, and nobody was in foul trouble. It's not like Pitt only committed 3 fouls in the second half. This was a disaster all the way around. There was no highlight in this game. There was no upside. There's nothing you point to and say, well, at least they had this. I mean, it was all... look, Nike Subandi had the best game, I guess. 17 points and 7 rebounds. Guillermo had 14 and 8. He went 6 of 6 from the free throw line. Nike was 6 of 11 from the floor, 3 of 5 from 3. Only committed 1 turnover. But, there's no highlight here. There's no upside. And it's a disappointing end to the ACC tournament. You knew it was going to be a tough matchup. You knew it was going to be a tough game. And I picked Pitt to lose. I didn't think they would win this game. But I didn't think it would be this bad. I picked them to lose by like 5 or 8. I didn't pick them to lose by 27. Just a disappointing performance, a miserable performance. Like I say, a miserable game to watch, but we all lived through it, and now we'll find out what happens on Sunday night when the selection Sunday happens and the brackets are announced. I'm going to get into the comments and questions here. We got a lot already rolling in. I think there's no... I think people have a lot to say. So if you have your comment on the game, your question about the game, you can post it there. I'll say this, all right? And I'm sure we'll get into this conversation a lot. Don't ask me if Pitt's going to make the NCAA tournament. All right, I said this on the post-game show yesterday. All right, and I'll say it again here today. Maybe I'll say it in the morning Pitt tomorrow. I don't know. All right, and I said this on Twitter, and somebody said, you need to just actually. Why don't you give an opinion? And I mean, like, what opinion can I have on whether or not Pitt's going to make the NCAA? I don't know. Anything I would tell you right now about whether or not they're going to make the NCAA tournament would be a guess. Just a guess. A speculation. Somewhat based on the brackets we see online, which themselves are informed speculation, but speculation all the same. Educated guesses, but guesses all the same. I don't know if Pitt's going to make the NCAA tournament. There's 3 more days of basketball to be played. 2 more days of basketball to be played around the country. Full of games and teams that could impact Pitt's spot in the NCAA tournament. Teams could steal the spot. Teams could lose a spot. Guys could, there's a lot that could happen. I think if Pitt was in the bracket this morning, which seemed to be the case, 10, 11 seed, wherever they ended up being, were projected. I think if they were in the bracket this morning, I don't think this loss bumps them out. All right. I think they were in the bracket this morning based on their body of work throughout the whole season. And this one game, as disastrous as it was, as bad as it was, as ugly as it was, I don't think that undoes the success. I don't think it tips the scales entirely against Pitt. So if I had to guess, I would guess that they are in. But I have no idea. I hope they're in. It'd be fun to cover an NCAA tournament. But it's just a guess. We'll see. If you want to make sure your comments and questions get read, of course, you can always be a super chatter right down there at the bottom. There's a little $. You can click that and kick a couple bucks to the podcast, support the podcast, and we will make sure we get to your comments and questions. Let's see here. Scroll through and see what people have to say. As we say always, you can click the like button. You might not have stay tuned right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com so you don't miss anything we do. You can always turn on your notifications, and you can turn on your notifications so you get an alert sent whenever we go live, whenever anything comes up on Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. There's a lot of arguing. A lot of people a lot of people have had a lot of things to say, and it's pretty interesting to see. I think I might be buffering as well, so I apologize if we're having a problem. If you're not getting a signal here. This might be a sign, actually, if it's not working. YouTube, yeah, it's buffering. I apologize for the buffering issues. I think we should be back. Yeah, it looks like we should be back. I apologize if you got a buffering issue there. Hopefully it is working for you now. Wow. We got somebody in here who really is mad at me about something. I'm gonna go to this. OOF McGee says, have fun covering the NIT. Just know that I'll be permanently canceling my Panther-Lair subscription. I'm sorry to hear that. And he had another comment in here that was pretty funny. Let me see. Chris Peak, Jason Capel, and Heather Lake are the worst things to happen to the basketball program. That was wow. I'm not sure what I did. Peak will be setting unrealistic expectations once again. OOF McGee, man, you're pretty mad. I don't know what I did to you, but hopefully we can hopefully we can come to some resolution here throughout the show. But sorry if I offended you with some of the things I've said about Pitt. I'm not sure if it was good or bad, but either way, I apologize for any impact I had on the Pitt basketball program. All right, RJCman38 is a super chatter. Not sure which comment you want to highlight, but we will get to it for sure. CJ's Gamertag says, this team is a joke. The effort is at 0 again. Imagine giving no effort in the first half, then coming out in the second half and giving up a 12-0 run and still being in the game. Every one of them should be sitting on the bench. Jeff Capel did have some, I guess in football you would call it depth chart justice, but I mean, he had some minutes justice, like we talked about. I mean, Blake Hinson played a season low in minutes. Only time all season he's played less than 25. Federico played 12 minutes. His lowest amount, I think, in any game this season, certainly his lowest amount in an ACC game or against an ACC opponent. He played 9 minutes against VCU. He played less than 12 against Fairleigh Dickinson and William and Mary, but John Hughley was still in the picture at that point. But since he moved into the starting lineup, he hasn't played less than 17 prior to today. And he's really only had a handful of games where he played less than the 12 that he got out there. I think there was some roster justice being meted out. I think Jeff Capel did bench some guys. I think he gave a lot of minutes to the Diaz-Graham twins. Nike Sabandi obviously got a lot of minutes, and I think he might have been going with the guys he felt were trying. For lack of a better word, it's not even, at that point in the game, at the second half, when they're losing like they are, it's not even about which guys give you the best chance to win. It's just who's going to still work, who's still going to try. At this point in the game, when a game is going like this, when the game is getting away, when it's pretty clear you're locked into a loss, who's going to still keep giving their all? And I think he went with the guys he felt were going to do that, because it's not about winning at that point. It's about still battling. And Nike Sabandi was still battling, and Jamarius Burton was doing what he could, and Diaz-Graham twins were still battling out there, and those are the guys that Capel went with. Maybe too late. I guess that would be a debate of how long he should have kept those guys in. But, that's he ultimately pulled him out. Greg Biancone, apologize, Greg, if I mispronounce your last name, says, boy, it went from a possible number 1 conference seed to a disaster so quickly. Yeah, it really did. I mean, it really fell apart in the last 2 weeks. With the loss at Notre Dame was a pretty bad omen. Obviously, the Miami game was a real disappointment. They got past Georgia Tech yesterday, and I thought they showed some resilience in that game and ability to handle adversity in that game, and they were impressive in that regard. But, then they just get destroyed tonight. They get blown out in this one, and it's, there's really no apologizing for it. It just it was not a good way to end the ACC schedule, not a good way to end the ACC tournament. David Allen says, goal for me this season is to just enjoy the games. Pitt isn't likely going far, just hoping for good, exciting competition. Yeah, I mean, I don't think we ever thought that, I mean, maybe you did. I never thought they were going to the Final Four or Elite Eight. You know, I thought Sweet 16 would be a heck of an accomplishment for this team. It's just when they're playing well, when they're firing on all cylinders and they're excelling, they can be pretty good, and they can have some real success, and they could, you know, make a run in the ACC tournament and maybe win a couple of games in the NCAA tournament. And look, and I still think, you know, depending on the matchup they get, all right, if they're matched up against a team that has the talent and size of Duke, they're gonna run into a buzzsaw again, and they're not gonna win. All right, it's gonna be very difficult for them to win. But if they get a more favorable matchup, which is, say, a team with slightly closer to normal size and slightly closer to normal talent, I mean, I think they still are a talented team. They're still a good offensive team. They can still score. I think they're liable to go for 80-plus on most nights, depending on the matchup. And I think that, you know, so there are opportunities out there still for them to win. But when you play against a team like this, when you have this kind of when you have this kind of matchup, you're going to be in a really difficult situation. Let's see. Brian Ulrich says, this team made me feel again. Even if we missed the tournament, this year was a success. Yeah, we'll probably keep having that debate for a long, long time. I think we will. Look, we had that debate a lot about the 2018 football team. They went 7-7, but they won the Coastal Division. Was the season a success or a disappointment? My standard line has been for the last 2 weeks. It will continue to be for the next 8 months or however long. That this season, that you can have. I think you can hold both opinions. That you can be disappointed at this, at the way this season ended, particularly if they miss the NCAA tournament, while also absolutely and sincerely celebrating this season as a success, given the accomplishments that they reached. What they achieved this season, they had not achieved in 7 years. And, whether they make the NCAA tournament or not, that's still true. I think there's different levels of success, and you could certainly push it to a certain, you would like them to achieve as much as they can. But getting to 22 wins, having a winning record overall, winning more ACC games than they ever have, and putting themselves in the position again. And I mean, if you listen to the Morning Pit, you listen to my live shows, you listen to the post-game shows, you've heard me say these things so many times, you're tired of hearing it. But putting themselves in a position to be in first place in the conference in the final week of the season is such a giant leap forward from where they were before. And I know, I always say, you can't just judge it against the preseason expectations. Expectations change, blah, blah, blah. And I still believe all of that. But when you're looking at 6 years of mediocrity, 6 years of losing, 6 years of losing records, 6 years of being one of the 3 worst teams in the ACC year after year after year after year after year after year, that's 6. And then this year you are one of the best. That's success. That's a success. That's a giant step forward. That's improvement. That's progress. All of that is true. Even if you end up being disappointed by the outcome of the season, losing the 2 straight to end the regular season and missing that, number 1 seed, which was in their grasp, getting blown out in this game, which is disappointing and embarrassing. And whatever happens on Sunday night, it's still this season still was and is a success. But again, we're going to go back and forth about this for a long time, and I think there are people who, if you're already convinced that it's not, if you're already convinced that success will only be determined by the outcome of the next game, then I can't help you. You know what I mean? There's nothing we can do. There's nothing we can do. I think we're on different sides of it. Let's see. Super chatter here. Who just came in? Scott Lynch says, as a super chatter, we appreciate it, Scott. Was the defense bad all season, or was it just masked by a good offense? If the defense was better mid-season, what do you think happened? I think some of the... let me see. Defense. I mean, I think they struggled. I don't think they were a great defensive team all year. Jeff Capel sometimes would say things like he felt like they had played good defense. He felt like their half-court defense was good. That they often, sometimes where they ran into trouble is when they, got in transition, or teams got on fast breaks, or they committed turnovers, or didn't get an offensive rebound, and a team could get out and run, and they would give up easy baskets in transition. He also said that a lot of times some of the easy baskets they give up, or their defense broke down, is when they allowed offensive rebounds and second chance opportunities. And I think there's truth to all of that. In transition, it can be tough. I think transition defense is a tough thing to do. I think that there's an advantage for the offense there, and often give up easier baskets in those situations. Second chance opportunities, the same thing. Your defense is sort of scrambled up, and that's what he was talking about. Sort of non-set situations where you're not really set in your half-court defense, and you're either trying to get back in transition, or you're all scrambling around because this team, again, because they don't have a great rebounding presence in the post, they have to gang rebound, and so all the guards are going in to try to crash the glass, or at least they're supposed to, and that leaves guys open on the wing, that if that offensive rebound is grabbed, it can be kicked back out, and for what should be a good shot, or an open shot, or maybe even an easy shot. And so, I think that issue has been there for their defense all year, but I don't entirely agree with Capel that their half-court set defense was all that great. I think it has been at times, and I think they've got individual players who put in good performances, but on the whole, I think it's just been okay. That's the best I would say with it, and I think Notre Dame, there are teams that are able to come up with good plans against Pitt. There are teams that are able, through personnel, they're able to take advantage of Pitt's defense. I think Notre Dame was able to do that. I think certainly Duke was able to do that. But they even gave up some in the Syracuse game. Syracuse shot pretty well in that game. Pitt just shot much, much better. So, was their defense good all season? I think it was okay. And I think it gets exposed in certain matchups. Let's see. Scroll through here. Roman, our old friend Roman, we haven't seen. I feel like I haven't seen in a while. He was on the very first live stream we ever did. I don't even remember when that was, Roman. That was a long time ago. But glad to see you back. He says, if I told you before the season they would lose to Duke in the quarterfinals of the ACC Tournament and be like 75% to make the dance, all of you would have been doing backflips. Have some perspective. Yeah, so, Roman, what I always say, and I know you've watched these live streams enough to hear me say it, I always say that it's hard to judge a season against the expectations, just because so much happens over the course of a season. You played 4 months of basketball. You played 33 games. It's tough to sit there and compare it to the beginning of the season, because the expectations do change. And I understand disappointment from failing to seize the opportunity of winning the ACC. I understand the disappointment of failing to be able to advance in the ACC tournament. I understand the disappointment of kind of crumbling in the final week of the season. I understand all of that because the expectations did change, because the way this team played in January and February, it lifted the expectations. This was no longer a team that was projected to finish 14th. You know that old saying about freshmen are no longer freshmen by the time you get to January or February. They're sophomores because they played that much. Well, those preseason projections are no longer the preseason projections by the time you get to January and February. And I don't think Jeff Capel was the coach of the year because he coached Pitt into first place and a top 5 seed, after being picked to finish 14th. He was the coach of the year because he coached Pitt into the top 5 seed in first place in the final week of the season after 6 years of being one of the doormats of the conference. That's why he was conference coach of the year. That's why he deserved conference coach of the year. It was the way he put together this team and the success that he was able to manufacture through developing a plan, executing that plan, and then regrouping when certain pieces of that plan fell apart. The expectations change. They were one of the best teams in the ACC in January and in February. All right, and we're no longer comparing it to where they were projected preseason. But what I will say, where the past is relevant, where I do think we should keep sight of the past, is what they've done over the last 6 years. And to go from being one of the worst to one of the best makes it successful, and it should be at least some solace. And you know what, if you even want to get beyond that and just on sort of because I know a lot of the reaction to a game like today, or the Miami game or the Notre Dame game, it's emotional. There's an emotional reaction, and I understand that too. That's the beauty of sports, is the passion and the emotion. But even if you want to get on an emotional level, all right, think about if you were at the Miami game, the first Miami game, the Miami game at Pitt, or the Virginia game at the Peterson Events Center, or the Carolina game at the Peterson Events Center, or the Syracuse game. Think about if you watched the Northwestern game on TV, or the NC State game, or the other Carolina game, the game down there. Think about if you watched those games. This team gave you joy in a way that no team from the past 6 years did. Those teams from the past 6 years maybe would have 1 or 2 games each year where they really like surprised you and it was exciting and they gave you something good. They made you happy for a little while. This team did it a lot and did a lot of times over the course of the last 3 months. 4 months, however you want to count it back to November. I can't count months off the top of my head. This team gave you a lot of, I think, a lot of joy, a lot of excitement, a lot of fun. Right? I mean, it was fun to watch Pitt basketball again this season for the first time in 4 years, or 6 years, 7 years. It's been a long time. And I think you have to look at that too and not just get caught up in this game or the Miami game and the Notre Dame game, but look at the entirety of it and ask yourself, I mean, did you enjoy watching Pitt basketball this year? Because if you did, I'm guessing you probably didn't for the last 6 years. So if you enjoyed it this year, doesn't that make the season a success? But we all define it in our own way, right? Let's see. Josh Newark says, 1, Pitt, great season. 2, disappointing end of the season. 3, Duke is clearly an elite team. All these things can be true. Yeah, Duke, I mean, like, I don't want to get like caught up. Do you remember that one year? I forget what year it was. Pitt, it might have been the number 1 seed year when they lost to Butler. They I forget what year it was, but they had a really great showing in the Big East tournament. They might have even won it. I forget exactly the details, but Bobby Knight sort of famously went on TV and said that Pitt was his sleeper pick to like win the national championship or something because he just loved what he had seen. And clearly Pitt did not win the national championship. They did not advance to the Final Four. I don't think it was the 2008 team, 2009 team, so they didn't make the Elite Eight or anything like that. But Bobby Knight said that, and everybody got excited. Like, Bobby Knight thinks Pitt's going to win the national championship. And so I don't want to fall into that trap of watching Duke on this one day, March 9th, the afternoon of March 9th, 2023, and saying, I think Duke's going to win the national championship. But, boy, howdy do they have the talent to do it. I mean, they have the players to win a national title. You know what I mean? They have the players to make the Elite Eight and the Final Four in the national championship game. Now, they're young. I mean, all those key guys are freshmen. Whitehead and Mitchell and Proctor and Filipowski are all freshmen. But they are really, really good. And they attack, they're aggressive, they move fast, they're quick. It's hard, and I think games can get out of hand quickly against them the way they did today, just because of how efficient they are. And they've got great guys who can shoot. They got a lot of guys who can shoot from outside. They can attack you inside. They can attack you outside. The same guys who attack you inside can also attack you outside. I think they're really tough to defend, and they're really good on defense as well. Duke has all the makings of a team that should be able to make a run. I don't know if they're going to be as good as they were today, but they have the makings of a team that can make a run, a deep run, I would think. Let's see. RJ Man 38 says, losing a minimum 600 minutes over the course of a season, losing 2 players due to character issues will fatigue the team come the end of the season. This was predictable if you watched Pitt the last 2 weeks. I don't know what this team we talked about this after the Miami game that if they had John Hughley, they would probably be a better rebounding team than they are, and probably a better defensive team. He would defend better, at least rebounding. I think they would be a better rebounding team than they are. They'd get more defensive rebounds and probably more offensive rebounds as well. So John Hughley would definitely make a positive impact. Dior Johnson, I don't know, because I haven't seen him play in college, so I don't know what level he's at. And I thought they have pretty good guards. Their guards have played well all season. Their guards have led the way. Having another guy out there, I guess, to spell for some minutes would be good, particularly if he's talented and he can make plays. But I mean, their guards have been good. I don't know what. Yeah, I mean, the team is who they are, and that kind of stuff. I don't know. And I don't even know if I wouldn't call John Hughley's absence a character issue either. I think that's sort of unfair to him and his situation. Particularly as you start talking about things like mental health. So, Dior Johnson, yeah, it's a brush with the law. And that's an unfortunate situation to unfold. Hughley, you have sort of compounding problems with the injury and then needing time away from the team for mental health issues. You just hope both guys can come back and be a part of the team next year and help them next year, which I think is the plan. I think that's the expectation. But it's college basketball. It's college sports. You never know who's going to be back on the team next year. You can be pretty sure, but you're never 100% until they're on the field or on the court playing for you. Let's see. General So's Chicken says, I think it would be fun if we got into the NIT where we actually have a chance instead of winning the tournament, where we actually have a chance of winning the tournament instead of getting blown out in the first round of the NCAA tournament and build for next season. I mean, I don't know how great you think the separation is between, say, a 6 seed in the NCAA tournament and an NIT team. I mean, Pitt might end up with a better seed in the NIT than they would in the NCAA tournament. I think they'd be a top 3 seed, I guess, somewhere around there. I have no idea. But I don't think the separation's that great. I think it would come down to matchups. I mean, matchups would be the key factor. Is it a team that's good defending the perimeter? Is it a team that's especially good rebounding? I mean, those would be the two keys. And if a team is good at those things, it's going to be a tough game for Pitt, whether it's in the NIT or the NCAA tournament. If a team is not good at those things, then Pitt's got a chance to win in advance. And I think, matchups, probably more than which tournament they're in, the matchups are the bigger concern and the thing that could ultimately determine Pitt's path and how far Pitt goes. Let's see here. Robin Nesbitt says, Duke has dramatically improved since our first matchup. NBA talent over there. I think they handle Miami. Hopefully Pitt can get a win or two in the tournament. I think, it's that Duke team is much better than they were. I think they've come together. And this is not the first time we've seen teams like Duke or Carolina or Kansas or Kentucky maybe go through this a little bit where they've got these big-time lottery pick type guys, 5-star recruits who come in, and that's what Duke's roster is full of. I mean, it's not just a cliche or an easy brush off where you say, oh, they're just full of 5-star talent. I mean, they really are full of 5-star talent. The guys who played a lot tonight and scored a lot tonight, I went through the list earlier. I mean, Mark Mitchell, 5-star guy. Derek Lively, 5-star guy. Dariq Whitehead, 5-star guy. Kyle Filipowski, 5-star guy. Tyrese Proctor, 4-star guy. So, I mean, those 5 guys, and, when you look down the scoring sheet, Filipowski had 22 points. Mitchell had 12 and 5 rebounds. Lively had 13 points. Proctor had 11. Whitehead had 8 points. He had something else that I thought was... He had 8 points, 4 rebounds. Oh, and a steal. So, I mean, the guys that they were relying on, the guys who played the most and made the most plays and scored the most points and all that stuff, I mean, they were all 5-star guys. And sometimes you bring in those 5-star freshmen, they have all the talent in the world, but it takes a while to gel. Well, this Duke team seems to be gelling. They've won 7 games in a row now, and they just blew out, an ACC team, the number 5 seed in the ACC, by 27 points in the quarterfinals of the conference tournament. I mean, they're rolling right now. I don't think anybody is going to be excited about facing them, and particularly Miami tomorrow night at 7:00. That's going to be a challenge for the Hurricanes, and I'm not picking against Duke for a while. I'm pretty comfortable picking Duke to win until they lose otherwise. All right, I got a lot more comments and questions I want to get to, but I have to tell you about our friend Montana. I've told you about her a few times. I know you're mad. I know you're angry right now, but food will make you happy. And so go check out fortheperfectbite.com. All right, this is just like last night. We were heading right into dinner time. You've been watching the game. You're all frustrated. You're mad. Pitt lost by 27. You don't even know what you're going to eat for dinner. Go look at fortheperfectbite.com. Okay, it's a website, a blog by Montana. She's a lifelong diehard Pitt fan. Her family, they've had football season tickets since the 70s, so she's seen all the things you've seen. She's been cooking since she was young, and she has a passion for good food and local restaurants. She's actually a chemical engineer by day, but she's a chef by night. And she's got this blog, fortheperfectbite.com, where she develops and cooks and photographs her own recipes. She also highlights local Pittsburgh restaurants on her Instagram page, which is For the Perfect Bite. So you can go check that out on Instagram. And she's working to build a community to share great recipes and the best of Pittsburgh's food scene with others. She even made a Pitt-specific recipe that she put together after the ACC championship game, the football championship game against Wake Forest, is blueberry lemon panther claws. So look, there's nothing better when you're feeling bad than a good meal. So go check out fortheperfectbite.com. Montana's got a ton of good recipes. The photos themselves look delicious. You got to go check it out so you can have something good to eat tonight and make you feel a little better. I'm going to have some ice cream later. I'm going to make some pasta, comfort food, right? And I'm going to have some ice cream after that because we all need stuff like that sometimes. Let's see. Let's get through as many of these comments and questions as we can. Steak on the Grill says, ouch, tough game to stomach. Terrible defense, slow start, and Duke was just lights out. Yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head. Defense was bad, and Duke was on fire. CJ's Gamertag says, why play Nate Santos to give Kyle Filipowski 10 quick points? He hasn't played in weeks, but now's the time. I mean, I don't know what, I can't really argue with any of the personnel decisions. I was surprised to see Nate Santos out there too. Let me see when the last time he played. I don't even remember what the last game Nate Santos played was. I have the stats right here. Santos last saw the court against Syracuse. He played 35 seconds against Syracuse. Before that, he played 1:40 against Georgia Tech. He played 23 seconds at Virginia Tech. Today, Santos played, where is it? There it is, 8 minutes. The last time he's played that many minutes, he played 8 minutes against Boston College on Valentine's Day. And since then, he's played less than 3 minutes total in all the games since that Boston College game. So Nate Santos not seeing any time. But look, I think Jeff Capel was willing to put anyone on the court to see if anyone was willing to try. To see if anyone was willing to work hard and try to win this game. Not even try to win this game, but just to keep trying and play out these minutes and give it at least an attempt. And so he was willing to try anyone. Nate Santos ends up with 5 minutes or 8 minutes. He didn't do anything with the 8 minutes. He made a shot. He made a shot? I don't even remember it. I stopped taking notes at the final media timeout. So he must have made a shot after that. He also had an assist. So there we go. He was a +2, Nate Santos. You want to criticize Nate Santos? He was a +2 in this game. All right. PG Jeans says it's not good enough. It's appreciation for where we were and where we are. Oh, that was a comment somebody else said. I hate fans who think good enough is good, right? Or General So's Chicken said, I hate the it's good enough fan. And PG Jean says it's not good enough. It's appreciation for where we were and where we are. I think that's absolutely true. You guys are doing a lot of arguing against each other here. The super chatter coming in. Eric Bruno says the team was clearly overmatched and definitely fatigued after playing over 30 games. Here's hoping they get some rest and get ready for the tournament. I don't know if they were fatigued or not. I'm really not sure. I think they just ran into a really tough matchup. And now maybe where fatigue came in is as that game was getting away and they just couldn't hit anything and Duke was making it very difficult to run any kind of offense that they wanted to run. Jamarius Burton wasn't able to get to the shots that he usually likes to get. They weren't really finding open three-point shooters. Duke was closing out well, and maybe fatigue sets in there where you start hanging your head and you start losing that sort of will or desire to keep fighting back. You know what I mean? And the game really gets out of hand because you just can't get anything going. Maybe if it's earlier in the season, maybe if you're not, 30 games in, as you said, Eric, maybe you're able to dig a little bit deeper. But maybe this team just didn't have any more to dig into as this game went on and Duke kept pulling away. Let's see. PG Jeans points out that Nate Santos had a nice dunk. I apologize. I missed that. I was sort of, scrambling to get some things ready to start this live stream a little bit earlier. Then we ended up I was going to start it at 5. I wanted to start it at 4:45, so I kind of looked away from the TV. I missed the Nate Santos dunk. Apologies to Nate. PG Jean says Santos weighs more than both Diaz twins combined, hoping to give him a little more muscle out there. Yeah, I mean, I think Nate Santos can offer that. I think there was a point in time this season where I was impressed with Nate Santos. His rebounding, he was a better rebounder than I expected him to be. He was a little bit stronger than I expected him to be. He just can't get that 3-point shot to fall, and he never could. But he would do some nifty things, just didn't get many opportunities. Now, to some extent, you've got your guards. You know what I mean? You've got Cummings and Elliott and Burton and Sabandi. And so those guys are going to take up at least 2 spots, if not 3, on the court at all times. And you don't really want to take Blake Hinson out of the game very much. And so there weren't a lot of minutes to go around for Nate Santos as it was. It was interesting that Jorge Diaz-Graham seems to have passed Nate Santos as the top reserve 4, really, is what Jorge has become. And he is the 4. Guillermo plays the 5 and Jorge plays the 4. I think Jorge played the 5. Was it the Georgia Tech game? Might have been the Georgia Tech game, I think. He was playing the 5 because Guillermo and Federico were in foul trouble. They both had 2 fouls. So Jorge got some minutes there, but, all things being equal, or all things being normal, Jorge plays the 4. And ahead of Nate Santos. I don't think the ship has completely sailed on Nate Santos. I think he can be a good player. I think he can be a serviceable player, a guy who can do. I think he could be someone who can help them down the road. But he clearly wasn't there yet this season. And it's kind of at the point where, I think they showed today that if Nate Santos is in the game, it's probably not a good thing because it probably means Pitt is in some trouble. I mean, they have their 7 guys, 8 guys that they're going to go with, and it's the starting 5. It's Nike Sabandi and it's the Diaz-Graham twins. I mean, that's your top 8 kind of in that order. With Guillermo ahead of Jorge, and they'll play 4 guards and a center. I think, or they'll put Jorge out there as the 4, but that's your 8-man rotation right now. And Nate Santos is outside of that. We'll see where he moves next year because they're going to lose guys and they're going to have spots open up. But for right now, Santos is outside that mark. But here we are in the aftermath of a. Here we are in the aftermath of an ACC tournament game, and we're debating the merits and future of Nate Santos. This is what happens when when the team loses by 27. Roman says Santos has a nice spurt mid-season. Santos had a nice spurt mid-season, but just hasn't shown a ton otherwise. Peninsula P says Santos can't shoot, though. And the wild thing about Nate Santos, and we're going to go back to the Nate Santos conversation, is that he, that was what he was supposed to be able to do. He was supposed to be a shooter. Like, that was his skill coming into Pitt. He was supposed to be a great shooter, and they kept telling us how he made these shots in practice. He was knocking down shots in practice, but he would keep getting good looks this season. And I don't know. I mean, did he make 1 this year? No, he made 5. He was 5 of 30 this year. He made 1 against West Virginia, 1 against Michigan, 1 against Northwestern, 1 against Louisville, and 1 against Louisville. So 1 at Louisville and 1 at home against Louisville. And those were the 5 he made. He hasn't even attempted any since that Louisville game. But he's supposed to be a good 3-point shooter. It just hasn't come through on the court. They continue to believe in him, but it hasn't come through in the court. Mike Rubin says, if Miami beats Duke, will you get on and pump them up? Don't count them out. I mean, I'm not going to count them out, but I mean, the way Duke played today compared to the way Miami played today, and Miami ended up winning barely. They barely held on. Wake Forest had a chance to win that game. And, similarly, if you want to go sort of comparison to comparison, look at what happened the last time Miami played Pitt and the first time Miami played Pitt, and look what happened in the 2 games Duke played against Pitt. I mean, if you just want to go, compare them in that way, I know that Duke and Miami split the season series, but this Duke team now is not the same Duke team that lost to Miami earlier. And you look at, how they did against Pitt, and you've got, I think it seems to favor Duke. But no, I will not get on this live stream and talk about Miami. I'm not going to, you know what, we're just going to get into some ridiculous comments here about Pitt basketball. I think we've spent a good amount of time here. So we will, I think we'll call it for now. We didn't make it to a full hour, but I think we'll call it for now. So I will wrap this one up. Listen, while you're here, make sure you like the video and subscribe to our YouTube channel. I know the outcome wasn't what you wanted, but we put out Pitt video content all the time here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So you can, we'll find something. And don't forget, spring football starts next week too. So Selection Sunday on Sunday night, and then spring football on Tuesday. More basketball to come next week, one way or another. We'll have plenty of things to talk about right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. So click the like button, like on this video, and subscribe right down there. You can turn on notifications and get an alert sent to your phone every time we go live. I'm debating a Selection Sunday night show, but probably we'll just save it for the morning Pitt. We'll see. But whenever Pitt plays in the postseason, we will do a post-game show afterwards. So you can tune in for that right here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. In the meantime, stay tuned at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com for the most comprehensive source of Pitt sports news on the internet, football, basketball, and recruiting. Everything you need about Pitt sports is right there at Panther-Lair.com, Pittsburgh.rivals.com. Thanks everybody for tuning in on the live stream today. I appreciate it. Thanks to all the comments and chats and questions. It's a lot of fun. All the super chatters, we appreciate that for sure. And you guys have a good night. All right, the afternoon didn't go the way you wanted, but you can still have a good Thursday evening. And we will be back tomorrow morning for sure for the morning Pit right here on youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com.